Everyone has imagined going back in time with memories of the future, haven't they? That's exactly what happened in this story. Desu Herman failed in his mission to save the world from a monster and thought it was his end. But as he closed his eyes and awaited his death, strangely, he went back in time remembering everything that had happened. Now his goal is to do things differently so that he doesn't lose his loved ones again. Come with me and follow this fascinating journey, full of twists and choices that can change Desu's and the world's fate. Without further ado, let's get to the recap. The story starts showing a great destruction caused by that giant dragon. Its name is Napolitan, the last monster our heroes have to destroy to save the world. Out of millions of wizards sent to defeat it, only 6 survive. That's right, out of millions, only 6 are alive. If they die, humanity's end is sealed. Among these 6 is Desu Herman, the protagonist of this story. Now we'll have a brief explanation of why humanity is suffering from these attacks. Basically, a deadly mist is about to leak from the dark worlds and come to Earth, and if it arrives, it's over, everyone is doomed. And the wizards are responsible for defeating the monsters from these dark worlds so that planet Earth remains safe. The dark world where Desu is facing the dragon Napolitan is the worst of all, and as I said, it defeated millions and millions of wizards, leaving only the last 6. Oh, and don't ask me why it's called Napolitan, it doesn't seem Italian, much less like ice cream. Now, the battle against the big guy begins. The dragon launches its first attack, but before it hits the wizards, the attack is completely nullified. Napolitan then decides to try a much stronger attack. But once again, the magic is completely nullified by Desu, giving them an opening to attack the big monster. And they do. They quickly advance towards the dragon, and the warriors strike it with a combined attack, seemingly defeating it. Note that I said, seemingly, you'll soon see why. After that, the sun reappears, and everyone is happy and celebrates the defeat of the ice cream. Oops, I meant dragon. Then, they talk about the long battle they had. We're informed that 150 million wizards were sent to battle against Napolitan, and only 6 survived. At this moment, Desu remembers his closest friends, a red-haired girl and a boy with blue hair, among many other warriors who lost their lives in this destroyed world. While they talked, another wizard from the group asks where Desu has been all this time, since he's very talented and thanks to him, they managed to defeat the big guy. Desu replies that he's a commoner, and that's why he never gained much attention in the magic school, even though he has talent. The wizard then regrets it, as if he had been in the magic tower, he could have supported him to be even stronger. Well, everything's great, they defeated the final boss, now everyone will be happy, and the anime's over, right? Wrong. While they're talking, they sense an overwhelming amount of mana coming from where Napolitan was. They notice that it accumulated a great amount of mana in its heart, and now that it's dead, it's going to explode, and that's not going to be cool. They wonder why this is happening, since they clearly defeated it. But now there's no time for explanations, they just await the impact of the explosion. The group's wizard even uses a barrier, but I really doubt it will be enough. Finally, the heart explodes. And as expected, it's the end for everyone. Now all that's left is to pray. In his last moments, Desu remembers his lost friends and regrets dying in this way. The impact hits him, and he closes his eyes. And that's when things get weird for him. Instead of dying, as would be normal in that situation, something sinister happens. Desu finds himself back at the magic school, on the day of the new student's admission ceremony, in other words, his first day at school. Now he's younger and without the battle scars on his face. But other than that, all his memories are intact, and he's not understanding anything. Well, that's understandable, right? He looks at himself in the mirror and asks what's going on, until he hears applause and moves towards it. Arriving there, he realizes that it's indeed the admission ceremony he attended 13 years ago. The teacher explains to everyone that being there doesn't mean they'll get into the school. To be considered eligible, they must pass the special test, and only the top 600 can enroll. And this test is to clear a dark world. Desu remembers that it was exactly like this in the past and even speaks along with the teacher at this part. He still doesn't quite understand what's going on until the teacher mentions that the admission test for the year 3613 is about to begin. This indicates that he went back 13 years from his battle against Napolitan, and obviously, he's in shock, since the battle against the dragon started in 3616, 3 years after he entered school, and it lasted for 10 years. And if Desu went back 13 years, he questions if all that suffering he went through was in vain. Desu will try to catch his breath and will realize that all this is real, not a dream. While he thinks, a girl calls him. She asks if he's Desu Herman, and he confirms. She introduces herself as Ladoria Darish. She's from the second year and will be Deser's mentor. Deser remembers that this girl is a prodigy wizard who uses fire magic, and she ranked first in the institute's greatest talents. She finds it odd that he's staring at her intently and asks what's happening. Deser only says he's a bit nervous about the test, and she quickly encourages him, saying it will be easy, since they're just checking if they can fight or not. At this moment, she notices he's a commoner and mentions that unfortunately, even with good grades, he'll end up in the beta class, where commoners and students with poor grades go. Deser recalls this system and mentions that because of it, many talents were lost due to lack of instruction, as all the academy's efforts focus on the alpha class, where the nobles are. After that, they return inside the school and head to a hall. Ladoria finds it odd that Deser isn't impressed with the school's structure, and Deser just mentions he's visited a similar building. She claims it's a lie, as no building is remotely similar to this one, and Deser just smiles silly. Then she says they need to hurry or they'll be late for the test location. As they walk down a corridor, another second-year student appears. His name is Elhain, and Ladoria refers to him as an idiot. Deser remembers him and mentions he's a water magic wizard. He didn't get along well with Ladoria. Deser whispers to her asking if she doesn't like him, and she replies not only does she not like him, but she hates him with all her might. The guy starts talking and is extremely inappropriate, saying Ladoria was late because she's tiny with short legs. After they argue a bit, his attention shifts to Deser. He looks up his name on some kind of tablet and realizes he's a commoner. The guy starts laughing, saying that's what he expected from Ladoria, that a commoner suits her perfectly. After he leaves, Ladoria gets really angry and says Deser is obliged to pass the test. They head towards the test hall, and Deser starts looking around trying to find his friend, the one we saw dying in his arms. After looking a lot, he imagines she's not there, until by coincidence, she appears behind him and asks why he's looking around. Deser turns around and calls her by her name, Romantica. And looking at her face, he once again remembers the scene where she died in his arms. Seeing her, he thinks he doesn't know why this is happening, but since it is, he won't allow that tragedy to happen again. He will rewrite the history of this world. She in turn asks how on earth he knows her name since they don't know each other. Makes sense, right? Deser quickly replies he saw it on the screen above, and apparently, they'll be in the same group for the test. She wishes Deser good luck and leaves. Then Deser goes to talk to Ladoria, and she explains to him what their test will consist of. Basically, IT will be a race, but it's not just running and reaching the finish line first. In this test, attacks between participants are allowed, and if you receive a fatal hit, you're disqualified. But don't worry, since it's just a test, they won't die if they receive a fatal attack, they'll just be disqualified and teleported back to school. At this point, that sneaky guy shows up and says it's impossible for Deser to pass the test, since his student is a magic knight, and his name is Azest Kingscrown. For those who didn't pay attention, Azest is one of the 6 people who, along with Deser, fought against Napolitan. Deser is happy to see her and wonder if she also has memories of what they lived in the future. In his thoughts, he tells us how amazing she is. Besides being a magic knight, she's also an excellent wizard. After that, they leave, and soon the test for Deser's group will begin. He lines up with the other participants and they're teleported to the world where the test will take place. Right from the start, they're told that the first 3 to cross the finish line they can see on the horizon will pass the test. They're also informed that they're allowed to use magical attacks, interferences, and any other method to benefit them in the race. If they receive fatal damage, they're disqualified, and they're prompted to line up at the start line and get ready. Soon the test will begin. While they prepare, Deser again focuses on Azest. He wonders if the girl still holds memories of the future. At this moment, she talks to him, saying she noticed he's been observing her, but tells him not to worry, since even if he keeps training, he'll never get stronger, and that's why she won't attack him. According to her, she can't waste time with a weakling. With that, Deser confirms she really doesn't have memories of the future. And right after that, the countdown begins, and finally, the race starts. As expected, Azest quickly takes the lead, and the other competitors follow. Deser and Romantica fall behind, and Deser starts talking to her as they run. Romantica spots a little creature in the grass and finds it really cute. At that moment, Deser mentions he can see she still likes that kind of thing. The girl finds it really weird, of course. Deser is acting like he knows her, and he does. But at this point, only he has his memories, and Romantica has no idea who this guy is talking to her as if they've known each other for years. That makes her really nervous, and Romantica asks if he's flirting with her. Desu just smiles and says that at their pace, they'll lose the race. Romantica tells him not to compare her to him and to stop acting like he knows her. Desu apologizes and smiles again, a smile that deeply irritates the redhead. While they were talking, Desu spots an attack coming their way and without thinking, he pushes Romantica, and fortunately, the attack doesn't hit her. The guy who attacked tries another attack, but now Romantica is readying counters with a wind magic. Thus, the other competitor is easily disqualified. Then she thanks Desu for saving her but says that since she eliminated that guy, they're even now. And Desu smiles again, which completely infuriates the girl. At that moment, Desu asks if she's not going to run, since those ahead have a good advantage over them. Romantica says it's not a problem, she'll use something she was saving. She uses a wind magic, and meanwhile, we're shown a kind of control room where the teachers evaluate the students in the test. They say that in Group D, it's obvious that Azest will win, as she's very powerful. But they disparage Desu because he's a commoner. I bet they'll be surprised by the test result, but I won't spoil it. And remember the magic Romantica used a while ago? Well, she immediately takes out another competitor. Azest keeps advancing, cutting through the wind, and the other competitor is disqualified as a tree falls on him. Now there are only 3 participants left, Azest, Desu, and Romantica. We go back to the 2, and the girl says that now they both will pass. Well, that's what Desu hoped, but in reality, she says his little smile left her really annoyed, and he will have to pay for that. Desu asks if that's not enough. She, in turn, tells him to give up before he gets hurt. However, Desu doesn't give up, which surprises her. She asks if he's dumb, since he already saw her magic and knows how strong she is. Desu keeps going and doesn't give up. She says there's no other option, she'll crush him now. Romantica summons several magic circles, and soon several wind shots hit him. After casting her magic, she walks away as if she had already defeated him. But as she turns and moves forward, Desu mentions he's surprised that she can handle so many magic circles simultaneously. The girl is impressed that he wasn't shattered. Desu then starts talking about her attack. He says she prioritizes speed, so her control is weak. Thus, with a simple deflection in the root of the magic, he can make all her attacks miss. She gets angry and summons several magic circles again. But again, it doesn't work. Desu subtly diverts the path of all the attacks. Romantica notices that he's using a reversal spell, but she finds it strange. Since his magic circle is very small, and to achieve this result, he would need a much bigger one. This talk about his circle is weird, but let's keep going here. She decides to try harder and summons many more circles and tries to attack him. Unfortunately for her, it doesn't work. Desu easily nullifies all the spells. Desu then says that she's mistaken if she thinks he can only use reversal spells. He then invokes the grease spell, which makes him lose friction with the ground. A very basic spell. Desu tells Romantica that the test is not about fighting her, but about reaching the finish line first. He also mentions that he can receive damage there as long as it's not a fatal hit, which makes his next move possible. He combines the grease spell with a fire explosion that makes him slide very fast forward. And obviously, this impresses the girl. Up ahead, Azest spots the finish line. She senses Desu's presence and realizes he will catch up. She says she doesn't know what he did to beat Romantica, but retracts what she said about him being weak. Azest is a person of few words and quickly summons dozens and dozens of magic circles to attack Desu. He then stops and starts analyzing her spells so they're nullified. He quickly takes control of most circles. Seeing he was doing that, Azest quickly shoots with the ones left, but Desu manages to dodge all fatal attacks. Azest launches a new attack and says this time he'll be defeated. Desu quickly takes control of her attack and uses the grease spell again. He puts the trajectory of Azest's spell behind him, and the shockwave makes him race very quickly to the finish line. Azest tries to react, but Desu zips past her like a bullet and finishes the test in first place. Azest comes in second, and Romantica follows close behind in third place. After the tests, the professors commented that as expected, no commoner entered the alpha class, which is outrageous. Despite Desu outperforming everyone in the group, in this academy, there's a lot of prejudice. Even if you perform exceptionally, if you're a commoner, you end up in the beta class. And the beta class lives in precarious teaching and structural conditions. The arrogant nobles claim that the commoners should be grateful just to set foot in the academy. What jerks. While they laughed and mocked the commoners, the school leader announced that a certain student received a recommendation to join the Alpha class. That person is desu, and the one who recommended him was Professor Bridget. Obviously, all the other nobles denied it, but this shows the potential that our protagonist possesses. After that, we go to desu. Like the other students, he's checking which class they're placed in. Desu isn't surprised to be in the beta class since it was the same in the past. Commoners always end up in this class, regardless of test results. Desu seems okay with this, but when he looks to the side and sees Romantica, he notices that the girl is completely shocked. Even though she's a noble, she ended up in the beta class. Soon, you'll find out why. As classes begin, Romantica observes the room and mentions that it's falling apart, very different from the Alpha classrooms. At this moment, the professor talks about the classification of magical power levels. The magical circle levels range from 1 to 7, and the higher your level, the more powerful you are. He also adds that to be in the Alpha class, you need to be at least level 2, and everyone in that room is considered level 1. After that, before classes start, Desu had a conversation with Professor Bridget. In this conversation, she mentions that he has grown very well, and nobody imagined he would defeat Azest, the blonde girl from the test. She says she would have liked to place him in the Alpha class, but when she proposed it, all the professors were against it because he's a commoner. Back in the classroom, it's mentioned that the reason he's not in the Alpha class is the barrier between nobles and commoners. He also mentions that this discrimination made humanity lose many talents in the past, and if it continues, everything will happen the same way. Desu's mission now is to awaken as much talent as possible, even if he has to train them himself since the education the beta class receives is very poor. Next, we see Romantica sitting and looking quite depressed for being in the beta class. While she laments, a noble approaches her. He asks if she is Romantica Eru, the daughter of Baron Eru. She confirms and asks who he is. He introduces himself as Donetta Haydon, from the Alpha class. He mentions he's looking for new members for his group and invites her to join the Blue Moon, the group with the best in the academy, stating that she has excellent skills and a perfect lineage. About the lineage, well, let's just say he'll soon be proven wrong about that. Romantica thinks that if she joins that group, she'll probably be promoted to the Alpha class, and it's obvious she should accept. But while she's thinking, the boy takes her hands and says he has a condition for accepting her into the group. The condition is that she agrees to date him. Man, what a foolish guy. Obviously, Romantica is confused, but the guy insists he's serious. He claims he fell in love with her as soon as he laid eyes on her. He also finds it absurd for her to be among the filthy commoners, as he puts it. Romantica asks for time to think, and the noble boy agrees. But before leaving, he leaves her a seemingly valuable gift. After he departs, he says he's awaiting a favorable response. At this moment, while Romantica is lost in thought, Desu appears behind her and says it was a good proposal. Obviously, Romantica is startled and falls to the ground. She gets up, furious, and asks what he wants with her. Desu simply says he wants to make the same proposal as Donetta did. Romantica scoffs at him, asking if he thinks she would be with someone like him. Desu, in turn, says it's not in that sense, he came to invite her to his group. Romantica asks for time to think, and the noble boy agrees. But before leaving, he leaves her a seemingly valuable gift. After he departs, he says he's awaiting a favorable response. At this moment, while Romantica is lost in thought, Desu appears behind her and says it was a good proposal. Obviously, Romantica is startled and falls to the ground. She gets up, furious, and asks what he wants with her. Desu simply says he wants to make the same proposal as Donetta did. Romantica scoffs at him, asking if he thinks she would be with someone like him. Desu, in turn, says it's not in that sense, he came to invite her to his group. She insists it's unthinkable to exchange the institute's best group for one with a new student from the beta class. Soon, she gets angry and tells him to stay away from her. He says if that's how she feels, there's nothing he can do, but before leaving, Desu leaves a letter for her, instructing her to read it when no one's around. She teases him, asking if it's a love declaration. Desu doesn't pay much attention and leans in to whisper to her, advising her to get rid of it after reading its contents, for her own good. Then, Desu leaves, mentioning she can respond later. Romantica reads what Desu wrote and starts trembling nervously. She can't understand how he knew all that. Outside, Desu wonders about her reaction, whether she'll be furious or burst into tears. After this, Desu attends combat classes. He's particularly interested in a certain boy, but hold on, he isn't. This boy is Pram, and among the warriors who participated in that deadly battle against Napolitan, he was the fastest swordsman. He was incredibly strong, even in a reality where he barely received any training. Desu's goal is to make him much stronger than he was in the future, which is now the past. Ah, you get it. While Desu observes him, Romantica arrives, asking how on earth he knew all that. But before she continues scolding him, he tells her to be quiet and watch the sword training. Pram will duel against a noble, and when Romantica sees the boy, she finds him incredibly cute and completely melts for him. She gets desperate, saying she wants him for herself. Now, his fight is about to start. Strangely to Desu, Pram chooses a heavy sword, something very different from the rapier he always used. For those who don't know, a rapier is a sword used in fencing. It's very light and flexible, unlike the large sword Pram chose. Desu is surprised, as it doesn't make sense to him. But soon, we'll discover why Pram chose this weapon. Pram's fight begins, and even with that big sword, he manages to exert great pressure against the snooty noble. However, the noble starts to cheat and attacks continuously. Pram tries to hit him, but the noble dodges and ends up defeating Pram. Obviously, if Pram had chosen a light sword, he would have won. The noble seems to realize this, as even though he won, he cowardly starts beating Pram. Desu rushes to defend him, saying the fight is over. The snooty noble tells Desu to shut up unless he wants to get beaten too. Desu then provokes him, asking if Pram's strike was so powerful that it scared him or if he's just envious of someone more talented than him. Now the red-headed guy gets angry and attacks Desu with all his might. Desu simply puts his arm in front of the blow, and the wooden sword is destroyed. He calmly states that the noble has already won the fight and asks what more he wants. Obviously, after that, the redhead gets scared and leaves. Then, Pram tends to Desu's injured arm, who mentions he's feeling a little pain but that if he hadn't used magic to block it, his arm would probably be broken. To apologize, Pram says it happened because of him. Now, Desu has an enemy from the Alpha class. The boy becomes sad and starts to cry. Desu reassures him that everything's fine, and soon they introduce themselves. When Desu was about to say his name, Romantica completely interrupts and introduces herself first. Obviously, she's head over heels for the boy. Pram tells them to call him by his first name, and so Desu does. Strangely, this embarrasses the boy. I think he's. After this, Pram says he'll forever be grateful for Desu's kindness and asks if there's anything he can do to repay him. Desu says he'll let him know if he needs anything. The boy leaves, and Desu is left alone with Romantica. Now he asks Romantica what she wanted to talk to him about. She remembers and then they go to a secluded place. She gets angry and asks if he told anyone about it. Desu says of course not, but mentions that obviously the teachers already know, and that's why she was placed in the beta class. Desu then reveals her secret. Her father was a successful merchant who made a fortune with his trade. With this money, he managed to buy a noble title, but even after buying the title of Baron, both her and Romantica's blood still come from commoners. That's why she was placed in the beta class, even though she has excellent skills and grades. Desu also advises her to decline the Blue Moon offer since once they find out she has commoner blood, they'll treat her with the same disdain they show to other commoners. Before moving on, he left a present for Pram. That sword right there. But during Pram's dream, the sword completely crumbled, and soon we'll find out why. But before we discover that, Desu, Pram, and Romantica head to Professor Bridget to formalize their group's creation. The professor says it's alright, but has one question: what's the reason behind forming this group? Desu is straightforward, saying he wants to join the ranking tournament, which would promote them all to the Alpha class. The professor acknowledges the difficulty and explains a bit about how the ranking tournament works. She mentions that after the first phase, the winners move on to the final rounds. These rounds take place in a dark world, similar to the admission test. In this final battle, the top 9 receive the title of unique rankers. If they maintain that position, they're automatically promoted to the Alpha class. The professor warns that no Beta class group has achieved this. Despite this, Desu believes it's worth trying. If they win, they'd make the nobles ashamed, as the teachers believe it's not worth teaching the Beta class. If a Beta class group wins the tournament, it would prove the teachers wrong and could spark a revolution where Beta class students are valued more. And so, the group is officially formed, and Desu wastes no time, immediately starting an intense training routine for the two until the tournament day. As Beta class students, they receive a completely rundown room full of rats to use as a training center. Romantica is completely shocked and distressed at the sight of the rodents. Desu insists they clean it all up, promising to find a way to seal the rat holes. They get to work, and soon the room is as good as new, although Romantica is completely worn out. Following this, he starts teaching Romantica how to control her aim. Despite her immense power, he remarks that her precision isn't up to par. Desu devises a control training, and she begins. She must move a ball into a circle using only her wind magic. Romantica thought it'd be easy, but as she starts, she realizes it's not as simple as it seemed and spends hours practicing. Now, Desu turns his attention to Pram. The boy is excited to be taught by Desu, but Desu admits he knows nothing about fencing, and Pram is already skilled at it. Eventually, Desu asks Pram why he doesn't use his sword. Pram seems a bit sad but begins to explain. He asks Desu to follow him. Pram leads Desu to his room and starts telling his story. He doesn't know who his father is, but he knows he's a noble, and his mother was a commoner. Due to noble complications, he had to leave, and the only thing he left for Pram was that sword. Seeing his sword, La Ele, Desu has no doubts. It's the sword he always used in that other timeline. Pram learned about this sword when he was 6 and was thrilled his father left it for him, starting his sword training. But everything changed when his mother passed away. Even at the end of her life, his mother never mentioned his father's name. Sometime later, Pram went to a merchant in town to evaluate the sword. To his surprise, the merchant said it didn't hold much value as a sword. Notice he said, as a sword, which will be important later in the story. Learning it held no value, Pram was upset, thinking his father left something worthless and didn't care about him. Since then, he avoided using the weapon, believing his father didn't truly love his mother. That's why he decided to use a large sword in the previous battle. After this, Desu returns to Romantica to check on her training while Pram continues his. Romantica manages to hit the ball into the circle, but Desu insists she must hit and keep the ball there. As he watches Romantica, Desu remembers the gift that scheming little noble gave her during the courtship. He seems to have an idea to solve Pram's problem and approaches the boy. Desu asks him to take another look at his sword, La Ele, but to his utter surprise, Pram says it won't be possible since he sold it to a merchant in town. Desu is worried because he knows that sword is special, and they need to retrieve it soon. Will they manage to do it? We'll find out in the next episode, but I'll tell you now, there's going to be a big plot twist when we discover its origin. But for today, that's all. Did you like it? So what are you waiting for? Subscribe and leave a like, show me some love. And for you awesome ones who always stick around till the end, I've left an incredible video on the end screen. It tells the story of Fate, a boy born with a useless ability, and because of that, he was always treated like trash until one day he awakens his true power, becoming incredibly overpowered and changing his life completely. Click and check it out, it's just amazing, alright? Until next time, take care and peace out.